All right, so listen, just like that pivotal point in Pulp Fiction where John Travolta stabs Uma Thurman and through the breastplate with a needle dripping with adrenaline, when Scream came along in 1996, the horror genre was in desperate need of something spicy to perk it back up. Something to wake us out of our slumber, and it takes a special kind of horror film to be considered in the inclusion of the Holy Trinity of Halloween, Friday the 13th, and Nightmare on Elm Street. But once we got to Woodsboro, a ringing landline, and a bewildered Drew Barrymore, everything that we knew about horror movies as a whole just started to change. And with the franchise's seventh entry on the way, directly en route, it's time to look back on the phone call that started it all with Wes Craven's Scream. Oh, and by the way, 500 subscribers, and we're going to give this away. We're going to run a randomizer, send this to some lucky watcher of my nonsense here on YouTube. So for now, Matthew Lillard's signed Bloody Ghostface, we're going to put him right there in front of Stay Puffed. He's going to chill with us while we talk about Scream from 1996. And being a fiend for the fright, like I would say that I am, I've seen this movie at least 100 times. And even with all those views, the second that I hear that landline ringing, I start to shift in my seat with excitement. I mean, every damn time, every single time I sit down, I can't get enough of this movie. I know what's coming next, but I can't wait to see it again. This is an intro that leads us to the stunning Drew Barrymore, who answers the most harrowing phone call of her young life that would usher us into a new segment of the slasher universe. Now, a couple things stood out to me about this intro. The first, it felt fresh. It felt new. You never had a discussion of all these other horror franchises in a different horror film like they did here with this trivia game the killer was playing with this young woman. The second was that this scene had Drew Barrymore in it, and she was in peril. A big, huge named actress on the poster. Right away, she was in danger. And just as soon as the smooth talker on the phone said he wanted to know who he was looking at, your heart sinks. What do you mean, who are you looking at? What are you talking about? You're talking to me on the phone. How can you see? And she realizes it instantly. Everything has changed in her life. Surely she's not going to get killed off this soon, right? I mean, the movie literally just started. Spoiler alert, she gets tormented and torn apart in one of the most startling openings to a horror film that we may have ever seen. Certainly that we had seen in some time at that point. Now keep in mind, this is mid-90s, so most of our horror roots were still Haddonfield, Crystal Lake, or Elm Street. And can we take a moment and just talk about this opening a shade longer? I mean, the killer gives her the sexy voice right on the phone, and then when he starts to really torment her and mess with her mind, she hangs up, doorbell rings, she calls out, "Who is it?" And then when he calls back, he says, "Don't you know you should never ask who's there?" So this tells us on this level that this killer is very, very close. It just sets the tone. The tone's been set. It changes the tone. It ramps everything up. Then you see the killer racing through the house, and you don't often see killers running. You see Freddy running, but he's a dream demon, so he can do pretty much anything he wants. Michael and Jason just kind of took their time. So for an iconic killer to be that fleet of foot, it was just different. It just felt different. And then, of course, he leaps through the window at her once she looks into the house, because she gets out of the house with a butcher knife. And you think, okay, that's half the battle. Get away from this guy, right? And she makes the mistake of looking back into her house instead of just moving forward. Rocky tells you, just keep moving forward. He leaps out through the window at her, and then you see her. She's literally feet away from her parents. She's so close. Now, she's been stabbed. She's terrified. Her voice isn't what it normally would be. She can't call out to her parents. She gasps. She tries. She just can't do it. Folks go inside. Ghostface turns her over. She pulls the mask off, and you can see her recognize this guy. At least it felt like at the moment that she knew him. and then he takes her life. And the scariest part about that to me was there's a fire inside from the popcorn that she's trying to cook, and then the mom grabs the receiver to call 911, and she can hear her daughter, who's clutching a phone outside, gasping for help, calling for her right before the kill blow lands. Then she gets strung up. It's really brutal to look at, but I was hooked. I was just absolutely hooked from that point on. This brings us, of course, to Woodsboro, California, and a fresh-faced cast that you're instantly captivated by. I mean, all 7, and you heard me right, 7. All 7 of them are captivating characters in a really strong horror film. I mean, depth of bench aside, this is a slasher, and in a slasher film, you need a final girl that you can get behind, you can believe in, and you can root for. And, you know, that's precisely what we got when we met Neve Campbell and her portrayal of Sidney Prescott. Now, as soon as you meet her, you like her. She's chilling in her bedroom, total girl next door. And even with her boyfriend, Billy Loomis, which is a shout out to Halloween, by the way, love that, played perfectly by Skeet Ulrich. He sneaks into her bedroom for a makeout session, and then you get a version of Don't Fear the Reaper playing in the background. Now, she pulls away from this guy because you can see there's some sort of a trauma there. They give you just a little bit, but they don't give you too much. I love that they just kind of put that out there for you to wonder what's going on. What's the story? They don't spoon feed all of it to you right away. But I dug these two as a couple right away because you can tell that there's some layers to that story. You know, Billy, he's clearly a boyfriend in need of some female companionship, and Sydney is just kind of keeping him at arm's length. When she tells him to stop, though, after this makeout session, he's super chill about it. He doesn't pressure her. I liked Billy a lot right off the bat. This is where we learn that the year prior, Sydney's mother, Maureen Prescott, had been raped and murdered. Just absolutely gruesome. Just the year before, just 1 year prior to this. And that would certainly explain a lot of the intimacy issues that Sydney's having. And on top of all that, Sydney sees Gail Weathers lurking around the school, and we right away pick up on the fact that she does not care for this bitch at all. Gail, of course, is played by the white hot, both visually and career-wise at that time, Courtney Cox. Just on fire that girl was during the time frame of this movie. Great lunchtime scene where they're all gathered outside. They're all sitting there, all these friends, boyfriends and girlfriends, and then you've got the odd man out, Randy. But they're talking about what happened. Tatum's boyfriend is Stu. And my God, does Matthew Lillard ever give that character life? He's just awesome stuff out of him. Billy we knew, and rounding out the 5 is the stag member of the crew in Video Nut Randy, who is played by, in my opinion, the severely underrated Jamie Kennedy. These 5 are talking about all the different questions that the cop asked them over their interviews, weighing the odds of what it would take for one of them to actually be the killer. Now, I wasn't the biggest fan of this. I didn't really get into the whole whodunits up until this point. You know, I liked the fact that Halloween had a singular tormentor, Michael Myers. If anybody was dying in a Halloween movie, it was Michael Myers that was doing it. And up until we met Corey Cunningham, there was only one guy under that mask. But, you know, even with this being a whodunit, it wound up working for a great many films. I mean, I prefer My Killer just being a standalone sort of outsider with a dark past. We talk about that. But a whodunit is what we have with this one, and we're just going to roll with it. Off the bat, though, you can cancel Sydney out of that list. She is not the killer because she becomes the killer's main target, and she's attacked at her home while she's waiting for Tatum. And great scene, Sydney going out on the front porch. She's asking him what she's doing while she's picking her nose. She gets attacked anyways. That'd be a hell of a thing to die with booger on your finger, but Sydney is a fighter, man, and she makes it upstairs. And there's a scene where Sydney's in her bedroom and her closet door opens in such a way that when the bedroom door tries to open, if the closet door is open, it'll catch on it. So we see this iconic scene of the movie where Ghostface has got his arm in the door, what he can get in, slashing away at Sydney as she tries desperately to use her computer to dial 911 because the landline's been cut. Such a strong part of the movie, and it's also an underrated part when the killer just disappears from doing that. He just vanishes. That's almost scarier than him trying to get to her through that little crack in that door because you have no idea where he is. So eventually Billy winds up showing up almost instantly. So red flags go up and you're thinking, God, this sucks. We liked Billy. Why is Billy the killer? It all makes too much sense because a cell phone falls out of his pocket. He looks guilty as can be, but he's in the police station. He's being questioned, and then Sydney stays over at Tatum's house, and she gets a call at Tatum's house from Ghostface. So Billy being in police custody, she gets a call from Ghostface. It can't be Billy. Now we really don't know what to think. But I will tell you this. Not only is David Arquette perfect as Tatum's brother Dewey Riley, also a deputy in the sheriff's department, but Tatum's mother is played by Billy Peltzer's mother from Gremlins. Can we put some respect on that woman's name? I popped when I saw that on Rewatch. I don't know if I missed it the first few times. I was probably busy staring at Rose McGowan, but damn it all to hell, Billy Peltzer's mom is in this movie, and we love her. She is on the cool list. And speaking of the cool list, I mean, we've got a lot of really solid callbacks and nods throughout the course of this movie that I just really put a smile on my face when I saw them. And we'll talk about them as we come upon them, but as far as Sydney Prescott goes, I'm not really sure why she felt the need to go back to school so soon. But she's back at school the next day, in the bathroom, listening to some catty bitches talking trash about her, all before she gets attacked again by somebody in a Ghostface costume. Now, was this the real Ghostface? One would think that it is, but how did he know she was going to land in that bathroom? Nevertheless, Stu, being the opportunist, as soon as they decide to call off classes for the foreseeable future, he throws a rager at his place to celebrate this abrupt freedom. Gail Weathers decides she's going to follow closely behind, as is Dewey, since he's tasked with keeping an eye on Sydney. And this all sets the table for a pretty bloody climax with twists and turns and all sorts of reveals that I can truthfully say I did not see coming when I first watched this movie. All right, let's start running through all the many things that this movie killed, because the callbacks are such a stellar thing to sit down and pick out and enjoy. We call them Easter eggs nowadays. Back in '96, they were just tributes to great movies from the past. I mean, the parents of Drew Barrymore's character Casey, they talk about running down to the Mackenzies to call the cops. Now that's a nod to Halloween, of course. Laurie Strode telling her kids to do the very same thing. Linda Blair shows up, of Exorcist fame, as an interviewer who's awfully mean. I think she tells or more specifically asks a girl how it feels to almost be butchered. I mean, that's pretty shitty, Linda. We've got Wes Craven showing up as a janitor named Fred, wearing a red and green sweater, brown hat, really funky attitude. Skeet Ulrich's character, named Billy Loomis, obviously a nod to Donald Pleasance's iconic Dr. Sam Loomis from Halloween. The sheriff in this movie is played by Joseph Whipp, who was a sergeant in A Nightmare on Elm Street. And Tatum is rocking a number 10 jersey, just like Johnny Depp did in that very same film. It's just a beautiful love letter to the genre that was masterfully crafted by Wes Craven, in my opinion. And you can't say enough about the cast for this film. This is another thing this movie really gets right. Crucial to any great horror film, you have to care about the characters. If you do not care about them, then what's the point in even watching the movie? And not only that, but in this movie, you care about them to a point where you don't want to find out that they're the killer. You want them to stick around for a little while. Stu is my absolute favorite here. He hams up every scene he's in. He owns the quiet moments. Like when Randy has a meltdown in the video store. It's just an awesome scene, by the way. And Stu, he just acts out smoking a joint to explain to the bystanders why his friend is acting this way and throwing such a tantrum. You know, Randy's crucial too. I mean, he explains the rules to surviving a horror movie. That's probably one of the more iconic scenes that still is replayed or reenacted or sort of stolen from in other films. You got to know what you're getting yourself into if you're going to survive one of these movies. He became a favorite right away. Tatum never wore a bra, which I really appreciated as a teenage boy. I mean, come on, who didn't appreciate that? And you know, this cast could be talked about in depth for at least another hour.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.
Now, this movie not only kickstarted horror as a whole, I consider all the copycats that came after this film. I mean, seriously. But it started a trend that I'm not a giant fan of regarding the killer reveals. The reveal here, along with the motive as to why it was happening, was really goddamn good. They just did a great job explaining it, not only explaining their history with Sydney and her family, but why they were doing what they were doing and what their plan was ultimately. They took you in 20 different directions before they landed where they did with not one, but 2 killers. Now, they did this to death in following films, and I was very irritated when I watched Hard Eyes and found that they followed suit, because I thought Hard Eyes was a pretty solid movie, but I didn't need them biting from other things. But they killed it here. This wasn't something that I had seen before, and once we found out who they were, those characters really chewed up the scenery. I mean, it was just awesome stuff. Both killer reveals, both characters, just perfect in their roles. Love them to this day. Still the 2 best Ghostfaces that there's ever been, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, so what killed Scream? Was there anything that Wes got wrong? And if I have to find a gripe, just the smallest, tiniest complaint, I'm not a fan of how this killer gets his ass whooped. And it becomes a running joke. But the guy takes bumps like he's a pro wrestler, whether it's a freezer door, cordless phone, or a beer bottle thrown by a dainty, braless blonde. Ghostface has himself a glass chin. It's given us some funny moments, and it's been spoofed to death in Comedy Cousin's Scary Movie, which this movie was originally supposed to be called. But I don't want to laugh at my killer. I want to be scared shitless when I watch a horror movie. It's a minor thing, okay? It's very, very minor, but it's enough, just enough, to keep this movie from being completely perfect for me. Now that is going to roll us right into our score, and 1996's Scream ages very gracefully. With a nearly perfect score of 9.5 out of 10. I mean, Wes Craven, for my money, he'll never get the kind of credit he deserves for reinventing blockbuster horror twice. He did it once in the 80s with the Dream Demon of Elm Street, and he did it again in the 90s with the menacing Ghostface. And for nearly a 2-hour film, this is remarkably easy to watch to this very day, even as dated as the movie is. I mean, Randy works at a video store, which doesn't exist anymore. Ghostface is using a landline, which most homes don't have. I mean, just remnants of a better time, which is why we harken back to them so often here on this channel. Speaking of which, I hope you enjoyed this review. Scream is tremendous. Scream is the staple of this. Think about sticking around and subscribing. We appreciate you being here. This is Agent Gracefully. I am Matthew Essex. I will see you beautiful people on the other side.